Josie here. In today's video I'm going to be showing you 4 different ways that you can make overhead time lapses for your art videos, ranging from cheap and easy to slightly more time consuming but a lot higher quality. Let's get into it. Overhead time lapses are a really great way to show off your art or your crafts in a really clean, simple and easy to see way. But there are a lot of things that can go wrong and it can be a little confusing when you're first starting out and you see these amazing videos and you just don't quite know how to achieve it yourself. There are so many things that can go wrong, from wobbly shots to bad lighting to forgetting to press record, which I've definitely done a few times. Stick around to the end and I'll be sharing a few different lighting tips that I found along the way that can make a massive difference when you're filming these kinds of videos. The first setup is amazing for filming videos for social media, whether that's TikTok or Instagram Reels, something like that. So it's using your phone, which most of us have a semi-decent phone these days. For this first method, I used my iPhone's time-lapse setting. So most newer phones will have this setting built into their cameras. And if it doesn't, there's quite a lot of different apps out there. So just have a little Google and see what you can find. To hold my phone over my desk, I use this clamp arm, which I got on Amazon. It was pretty cheap. I think I got it for $30 Australian. I just attach the phone to the clamp. It is a little tricky to get it in sometimes, but at least I know it's nice and secure. This one has a spring-loaded arm, which is really helpful for maneuvering different positions. I can even swap it around from vertical to horizontal depending on where the footage is going. I just have a desk sitting next to my main work desk, and then that means that if I wobble this desk it doesn't affect the phone because it's not connected in any way. So if you have a small table or even a small chair to put beside your actual desk, I would recommend that just to avoid as many wobbles as you can. This is where wide angle mode can come in quite handy. I often can't fit everything that I want to in the frame, so if your phone has a wide angle mode, then I would definitely suggest doing that. So just make sure that everything's framed up nicely and then just hit record. The next method is using exactly the same setup, but instead of hitting the time-lapse setting on my camera, I just hit the normal video mode. With this method, I just record everything as a straight up normal video and then I speed it up using editing software later on. This is a great method if there's parts of your video that you don't want to be sped up and you want a bit more flexibility when you're editing. Another benefit of this method is that you can generally record at slightly higher quality. So on my phone, I can record at 4K, which is really great for when you're editing later on, and if you want to zoom into little bits of the painting, then you won't lose too much quality. And I find that's actually a really good editing technique to keep these time lapses interesting, because just filming one static shot for, you know, several minutes can get a bit dull. So it's good to break it up where you can, and this kind of method where you're filming the whole thing and then editing it later can really help with that flexibility. You don't need expensive editing software. If you've got a Mac, then you can just use iMovie, or you can even download lots of different apps for your phone. I like to use the Splice app from GoPro, which is actually a paid app, but there are loads of different apps out there and there are quite a lot of free ones as well, so just have a look around. I've recently been using DaVinci Resolve, which it does have a little bit of a steeper learning curve, but it's completely free and you can just download it on Mac or PC and it works great on both. So there are a lot of tutorials here on YouTube. I won't get into the full editing of time ramping and stuff, but if you just look up time ramping tutorials on YouTube, you'll find a lot of them. The next method is a little bit more advanced, but it can give a massive bump in quality to your videos. This method lets you take your slightly fancier camera, if you have one, whether that's a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, or just something that's a step up from your phone. This method allows you to use that camera in an overhead shot. But to do it, you're gonna need a tripod with a horizontal arm. and it took me quite a long time to find the right tripod for this because it's quite a specific thing and not all tripods do it, and also a lot of the ones that do it are really, really expensive. But after doing a lot of research, I eventually found this tripod from Newer. I really don't know how to pronounce the name of this company, but it is a great tripod and it's pretty sturdy, which is really important when you're putting your really nice camera horizontally. You do not want it to fall over because that could result in a smashed lens or a broken camera, and no one wants that. I would also recommend using a wide angle lens if possible, because it can be a little difficult with the longer lenses to get everything that you need into the shot. So I use a Tamron 17mm to 28mm, which is a zoom wide angle, and that just lets me have a little bit of flexibility with how much zoom I want, but it still shows a lot of the table, which is really helpful, especially when I want my palette to be in the shot as well, because I think it's quite helpful for people to see your palette while you're painting. And the final method is something I've been experimenting with recently. I wouldn't say I'm very well practiced with this method, but I can see a lot of potential for some really, really amazing high quality time lapses with this method. And that is essentially doing a real time lapse. So all the other time lapses that I've been talking about so far have been simply video that has been sped up. But with this method, instead of taking video, you're taking lots of photos. On my Sony mirrorless camera, it's called an interval shoot function. I'll put a link to a video down below which explains how to set it up, because I'm not a tech channel, I'm an art channel. But essentially what you're doing is taking photos in intervals. So with the experiments I've been doing 3-second intervals. So I just set that up for 10 minutes, take a photo every 3 seconds. One quick tip I will give you is to use a slower shutter speed. This makes your hands look a little bit blurred, and when you look at the individual photos you'll think it's a bit strange, but then when you piece the whole thing together it actually makes it look a lot more smooth and just makes the whole thing look a lot more high quality. The amazing thing about this method is that photos have such a higher resolution than videos, so you end up with a video that is a resolution that's, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe even 4 times higher quality than a 4K video. I think that's the maths anyway, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure, but what it means is that you can zoom in really close and you will not lose any resolution. I could get quite nerdy here with this, but just know that this method is the best way to get the highest quality time lapse you can. Obviously there are some downsides, like you're not going to be able to get the regular video as well, so it might not be the best option for everyone. But if you're doing a really, really long painting and you don't want to have, you know, hours and hours of footage, I think this is actually a really good way to do it, because you're getting that high quality but you're not having to take hours and hours of 4K video, which is going to fill up your memory cards pretty quickly. I wanted to share some quick tips for lighting when you're doing these kinds of videos, because it can take your video from looking something like this to something like this, just with a few different lighting methods. So the first method is using daylight, and this is basically the cheapest. I mean, it's free most of the time. If you have a big window, I would definitely suggest setting up your painting by the window, especially if it's a cloudy day, because the clouds will act like a giant softbox and really evenly and nicely illuminate your painting. I would only really do the window method if it was a cloudy day, because if you've got sun coming in all the time, it's gonna really ruin a lot of your time lapses, because it's just you're gonna be able to see that shadow and that sunlight moving all over the paper, especially when it's being sped up. So you really want to avoid that as much as possible. But if you do have a big window and it's a cloudy day, I think that's actually a great way to light your time lapses. The second method, and this is the one that I've been using for quite a while now, and it's made a big difference to everything that I do with my art inside, really, and that is to buy softbox lights. These don't have to be the really expensive softbox lights. I just bought some again from Amazon, which is clearly my favourite place right now, and they've dramatically improved the lighting of my videos. And I just have 2 of them, and I just put one on either side, and then I put my camera in the middle, and that just evenly illuminates what I'm doing. It's also just helpful for me to see my artwork a bit better, and I've realized that it just helps, you know, not just showing a better video, but it also helps me to be able to see what I'm painting better, which is always going to be a good thing. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you'd like to see from me or any questions on anything that I've mentioned in this week's video, and I'll make sure to respond, and I'll see you next week. Bye!